And I have this romantic theory of wine that terroir is not just the soil and the climate of the day of the vintage. It's the story you just told me. You being told the story by your father, who was told the stories by your grandfather. As of course, they get diluted and they get changed along the way. But I can't help but think that that's what's in the bottle too.
You're seeing on the back of our bottles, every single bottle's named after a moment, a memory, a mission, or a meaning in our lives. So beyond the varietal, there's the vision in the bottle, the story in the bottle.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are at a away game today, way down in the Temecula Valley. About to have a conversation with Vito La Fata. Introductions in just a moment. Hey, Wine Talks available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you hang out for podcasting. Hey, listen, always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single barrel bourbon to try with some of our friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices in over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup available as well as delivery in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia or North Carolina. Drink responsibly, be 21. Hey, have a listen to a show that I released. I was in the Napa Valley at the African American Association of Vintners. Incredible conversation with Angela McCrae, who's the CEO up there, and what they're doing to make inroads in our industry for diversity and inclusionary, as well as a conversation I had with PK Sr. We lost him a couple of years ago, but he's the founder of the direct-to-consumer industry of wine in 1972 from a little wine shop in Palos Verdes Estates. Incredible recap of his history in the industry as an immigrant from Cairo. Have a listen to that, but not why we're here. Here to talk to Vito. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, man.
Title, they give you a title?
As far as?
Like your
I'm the
CEO,
president,
CEO. Winemaker.
Not winemaker, but president and CEO if we have to be technical.
And does your wife allow you to carry that moniker with you? Because
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
You met my wife. She was the controller, of course,
Yeah.
of the Wine of the Month Club at the time. But we're here at at Vito's tasting room at La Fata Cellars. It just opened in
February 4th.
February. Wow.
Yep.
That's quite an undertaking in this industry to bite off. What were you doing before that? What were you doing before the wine business?
Well, we still have them. We own multiple other businesses. We have a lot of online businesses in the business coaching space, online health and wellness. We still own all those things. My wife is still big in the health and wellness space, personal development space. We do business coaching. This was the legacy play. This was the family generational thing that we were kind of fulfilling on a dream that my dad and my grandfather and them had, making wine in our basements of Long Island. That this was the one that we felt we could take the stories and all the lessons and the things that we learned and put them into a bottle and share them at tables and conversations and connections. And that was our way that we thought we could change the world, one conversation at a time again.
I like that one conversation at a time. You're Sicilian, right?
That's right.
Should
So
I
this
be
conversation
worried?
better go well.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I'm a Sicilian from Long Island. Should I be worried about this conversation?
A little bit. Just a tad.
So, no, but this is an important thing you just brought up, and we hadn't talked about it before, but the cultural position of wine in many cultures, particularly Italians and Sicilian wines themselves are brilliant wines. But this was culturally part of your family. Wine was part of
Growing up.
Normal
part. I joke about it, but I'm like, I think my dad gave me wine before he gave me my mom's boob. He's like, wine first, son, here. But I joke, but it's just a normal thing. I remember sitting on my grandfather's lap and him having wine and just being like, not like he'd be like, take a sip type thing.
Yeah,
it's not
right,
that we really
course.
liked it back then, but it was just a normal thing at dinner or at lunch. And we were raised with it as a part of life.
But you watched him make it in the basement.
Oh my gosh, we have old
Do you remember the
8mm
smells?
footage. Me running around, jumping up in to look at the bins and seeing the barrels that they had in the basements. But they were obviously amateur at it, but it was still fun. It was still like always a wine bottle, a red or a white on the table. My dad was always proud of doing it. And it was like his little passionate thing that he had outside the restaurant that gave him some purpose and some pleasure in a life that was very work oriented for them. like immigrant work ethic.
Right.
Everything was around work. To have that thing outside of that for them brought joy.
Is he still around?
No, he's passed now. He never got to see this.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
sad.
yeah.
But
He sees it somewhere.
Yeah, he sees it somewhere.
Yeah.
Take one generation back. They're from Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
So your grandparents immigrated to America, or
That's
your
correct.
father?
They all did it at the same time.
And what were they doing in Sicily? Do you know?
Yes, I do. We have a bottle called Roots of Life. I tend to do the story more at our storytellers experience that we do up on our vineyard, because the way I discovered our family story was I was at an Italian embassy cleaning up some paperwork for my citizenship, because I was a citizen of both. And I couldn't go back to Italy without potentially having to go do military service. I had to just do some paperwork.
Well,
I had to do some paperwork.
better do your
right?
research,
It was just basically paperwork. But when I'm there, the guy calls my name, and while I'm waiting to be go in, a little man walks up to me. It's kind of like, did I hear that you're a La Fata? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm a La Fata. And he's like, from Sicily? And I'm like, oh, yeah, my family's from Sicily. He's like, from Korea? I'm like, that's where my dad's from. Da, da, da. And he's just like, the pasticceria? And I'm like, my grandfather owned the pasticceria. He's like, I knew your grandfather. Whoa. We owned pasta factories back there. And then the whole, like, that guy kind of being like chatting with me for a few minutes. And then he's like, how's your grandfather, this, that? I'm like, he's passed now. He takes off his hat and he goes, well, I only come over to pay my respects then, because he was a great man that provided much opportunity for people in the village, this, that. And he kind of just waddles out of my life. And I remember calling my dad to be like, who are we that this guy just came up? My dad, being the classic Sicilian, is like, come to the restaurant. I begin to tell you stories. And he begins to unpack the history of my grandfather, who was a Vito, and the pasta factory we had. It involves like bombing of the mafia by the governor's house, to then like revolution, to then going up to Milan, Italy, getting the contract for the Italian government, army, this, that, to them going to Venezuela and Caracas. All the incredible history that generation went through because of war and fascism and government and just mafia and politics and whatever else. I mean, like, that generation went through things that make what we sometimes go through now look silly, right? That in learning that story, I learned about all the pasta factories and everything that we own. So that's what we had going on back then. And it was quite a fascinating story to learn our roots of life.
I can see telling the story in the vineyard as you're explaining to guests, this is because, we don't have that in America as much. I mean, we're earning it or we're gaining it. There's some generational stories with the wine trade, but they're not like the Europeans. And I have this romantic theory of wine. We'll get into it a lot today, but one of them is that terroir is not just the soil and the climate of the vintage. It's the story you just told me. You being told the story by your father, who was told the stories by your father, grandfather, as of course they get diluted and they get changed along the way. But I can't help but think that that's what's in the bottle too.
That's right.
That's right. Watching your grandfather make wine in the basement.
Anna and I intentionally sat back when we were gonna make these bottles. And I don't know if you've seen on the back of our bottles, but every single bottle is named after a moment, a memory, a mission, or a meaning in our lives.
Wow.
So beyond the varietal, there's the vision in the bottle, the story in the bottle. And when I'm telling roots of life, often with people, we're also passing on the lesson to be like, I didn't know my roots of life. And when I finally learned them, I understood myself better. I understood things about our family, because the trials and the tribulations that my grandmother went through while my grandfather was dealing with this, and how many times she went from like having it to not having it to eating in the streets, the things. I began to understand why she got fixated in a lot of mindsets and things. And I'm like, Dad, I could have understood her better, and I could have probably had a better relationship with her if I'd understood the struggle she'd gone through, instead of me being this jerk little kid not understanding why she wants us to eat all the time.
Yeah, right.
It's because she didn't know, when am I going to have it again?
Sure.
When am I going to have it again?
Right.
And I taught, when we're sharing that bottle with people, we're also like, go find your roots. Go into your history. Go check it out, because in that you may understand yourself better. You may understand the loved ones that you're with better. But we in society could probably understand each other better. And there potentially could be more unity, less divisiveness, when we understand the struggles and the roots and the backstory and all the things that we've gone through to be where we're at. That would make a difference in this world today. So that gives us the opportunity, while having wine, to have that conversation, to create that connection. That's hopefully the catalyst to some change in someone's life.
How is that received? When you do that, do people stick their chest out and say, yeah, I'm going to do this? Or do they sort of say, I don't have time for this. What is there general reception?
It's an everything in between.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's ever like, I don't have time for it. I think they're more like, man, that's great. I should do that more. And great, we've got the kernel of the thought going in their brain to get going from there. As we see people here more, like our members, now that we're seeing them more, we're able to kind of follow up. Like, oh my God, you're having roots. You loving roots. Did you ever go follow up on that? People that we don't get to see again, type thing. I have to wish the best and hope that they go out and follow through.
Well,
that's the key to results in life. Follow through.
You're planting the seed, and I think that's so important because look, what is America? America is immigration. My father came from Cairo. My wife's mother came from Iran. We have a great history to talk about, but that's what America is. And if you get a chance to do that, I've studied French the last 10 years. My father spoke French, so I wanted to speak with him, and it was imperative to not only sit with a stupid application on your phone and go through Rosetta Stone, whatever I was doing, but to understand the French mindset and read about the French and eat food from the French, authentic food. And then you start to get a bigger picture of the mentality, and that's where the language comes from. Like you're sitting here and you speak with your hands, that right?
I'm trying to watch the mic right now. I'm like, I can cold clock that mic.
That's part of it. Excited and thrilled to be here because you've taken it to the wine side of things, and wine is in a weird place in the industry right now. It's battling with internet marketing and metrics and key performance indicators and packaging issues like this can of water here, Tetra Packs of wine, when I don't think that matters at all. I think wine is what you just explained. It's this conduit to conversation.
Because taking on one more business in our lives was like the last thing that Anna and
That's
I
a different conversation.
were the thing. But I was like, Anna, we had the conversation also of like what could pass on generationally to our children. Our other businesses, I don't know if they can pass on generationally to them, but we're like, the love of the land, the love of farming, the love of get your hands dirty in the dirt, do work. I was raised with a very much of immigrant work ethic. So work was just a part of our way of living. But the idea that I can pass on to our kids our love of story, our love of meaning, our love of purpose and those things and the lessons and we even have a wine called Pillars and Principles, the pillars that make a good life and the principled way of behaving in life that could produce sustained success. We're like, let's do that. And remember, we're Sicilian, so our entire Sundays, we're always 30 people at a freaking table going for hours and whatnot. I'm like, Anna, what if we can just make the tables and create the reasons that people sit back down at a table with good food, good people, good wine, has to be there. That's the catalyst, right? To create the conversations that make the connections that change the world. That was the whole thing. And we're like, now let's just go make the wine to be good enough at those tables to be worthy of those conversations.
That high altitude viewpoint of this idea is really refreshing.
Thank you.
Because, typically no one gets into the wine business to make a lot of money. We all know this. But I think that there's anticipation that you're going to make a lot of money. And I have so many stories of people trying to do this and not understanding what the point was. But this high altitude viewpoint is exactly what it should be about.
Yeah.
I pitch this all the time. The story of wine is not to say I got it for $5 on the internet. That story is a very short-lived story. But to come to Temecula, to sit in a tasting room, have this experience with the La Fata family, and go home and tell that story to somebody else, and all of a sudden, it's real social networking.
That's right.
Right? It's real social networking.
It's kind of like wine life and personal growth are all blending together.
Yes.
That's the thing that we really want to be able to do is just make the wine a conduit to some growth because of the conversations that are going. Because a lot of people have these conversations in life. The other day, one of our wines is called Blended Dreams, and it's about the concept of it is about if you want to achieve something huge in your life, like a big dream, like getting a wine business, I'm going, blend your dream with other people faster, intentionally. Like that should be part of your actual to-do list. Can I find the mentor, the coach, the promotional partner, the thing? Blend dreams together because nobody has achieved massive dreams standing up there on their own, barring they're an egomaniac. But you get the idea.
Yes.
But I was chatting with this one girl, and she's just like, she'd been in the military for 20, 25 years. And she's like, for 20, 25 years, I've been told what to do every single day. I don't have these conversations. I don't know how to dream. I don't have these conversations about dreaming. This has never been. So she was literally like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, then today, start thinking about it.
Wow.
Make this bottle be what you now go think about your dreams. And next time you pop in here, you better be able to tell me about some dreams that you thought about. Because then if I can be like, dude, I know somebody that can help you out with that. We run an event in our business called the Wealth of Connection Dinners, where I bring people together and I'm like, hey guys, we're in this world. You got 32 people here at the table right now. You're going to stand up, tell us who you are, what you do, what's the dream, what's the project, what's the goal, what's the roadblock. You get your option. But you got 32 people here that can freaking aim their energy, aim their intentions, aim their power all at you to help you achieve something that you have been struggling with or is just the desire. It's just the ambition.
Wow.
That's what the wine is about for us.
What a legacy, what an opportunity for you, again, taking that high altitude viewpoint of this, to pass on a legacy to people, to literally strangers that one day go, I was at this tasting room in Temecula and this guy is telling me to chase my dreams and to blend, and all of a sudden, look where I'm at because he took the shackles off, these people, and wine can do that. And so the question I always ask winemakers in particular, usually old world winemakers, because they would have maybe a more philosophical view, and there's no answer to this, but it's like, what is it about wine? We don't look at pineapple wine this way. We don't look at bourbon this way. We don't look at beer this way. In fact, we drink beer because it tastes the same every time the Heineken tastes the same as it did when my dad sold it at stores today.
That's not how I suggest you drink your beer. Find a craft beer.
Yeah, right. But wine surpasses all that. We don't fawn over that. We don't beverages. Wine carries with it. And I tend to think, I even go back to biblical times about, what his purpose was in the Bible. So do we have an answer to that question? Like, why is it that we open a tasting room of wine in Temecula and start to stimulate these thoughts in people? What is it about wine? Is it because it's from the soil, because from the earth?
I mean, I like it. I mean, isn't it a historical thing? It's been around through the greatest civilizations of time that I think there's a history to it. There is a myth to it. There is artistry to it. There is mastery to it. Because if you think about like today, and I'm not the winemaker, I'm the brand builder.
Right.
Because that, I didn't want to start the brand where it has to wait for my skills to catch up in winemaking.
No, of course not.
But for me, it was more along the lines of, I'm like, I can look at things and be like, hey, Cabernet by itself, there's a mastery to that varietal by itself. And there's something about that. Mm-hmm. How do I master that grape? How do I master everything that goes around it? But I'm like, but where's the artistry? And where's the adventure is now in blending. So you're like, now the world opens up. And I'm like, that is what makes, to me, wine such a special thing. There's mastery and history. And then there's future and artistry and adventure in its capability now. And it's just been the thing that has always brought people together. Almost every one of the biggest things in my life and in Anna's life, we were sitting at a dinner table with a business partner or somebody. We were having wine, having the meal, having the conversation. And it forged a relationship and it forged action or idea that moved forward. That, for me, it was just as simple as that. That I'm like, it's been the impetus for so much growth and change. What if we could just be at the center of that in our own small way?
Sure.
I'll never be the Mondavis and that kind of stuff like that, but I'm like, I don't know, we'll be our own little storytellers going around the world, dropping great wine, great conversations, and connections around the world.
Don't sell yourself short. Timothy,
I mean, who knows?
One of the Christian brothers, Timothy and Marvin Mondavi, and that generation didn't come here thinking they were going to start a new industry and make $1 billion. They came here with the same philosophy that you did, which is I'm going to spread the word of wine. Mike Gergich, shows up from Croatia, downtown St. Helena, with with $35 in his shoe. That's not because
and then wins that freaking white, blows the French away, and they're like, what?
It's interesting because it has survived all this, and it was at the Last Supper, in the Bible, and wine continues to be part of our lives. And this is what drives me crazy. And I spent 35 years doing it. I sold 17 million bottles of wine. All on the story. Yeah. I know it's pretty. I added it all up and I go, wow, that's a lot of wine. But what's changed from me back in the days when I started, ambitions like yours to create wines of what I call honest wines. Wines that are made from what they are and represent where they're from and the vintage they were made in, and the philosophy of the winemaker and the history of the family, the Sicilian history of the family, and it's not the case anymore. And what's happened in our industry is that digital marketing has changed the key performance indicators, KPIs. People follow those and they can move the needle a little bit. And if I got a 10% more lifetime value out of a person, then I'm making more money than I did. And I was telling my wife this on the way down here. It's lowered the quality of the wine that we see on the shelf because we got to chase that number, right? We're not chasing the dream like you are, which creates better wine. Automatically, it creates better wine. We're chasing a number. And that can only do so much. And this is, I think, the opposing forces of wine right now.
I mean, I think that's happening industries all over the world. That's why a lot of business is just getting the way it is.
Yeah. It's
like
just
every business is trying to do that. And hence why you got the big people eating up the littler people and going after that. But I still think there is plenty of opportunity for the storyteller.
Yeah, but what I think is the only opportunity, and we're going to get into your vineyards now and the history of how you started that part of it, but it's the only opportunity because you cannot compete on the internet and socially with Kim Kardashian because you're not just selling wine now. Now you're competing against any kind of attention. Yeah. And so you're competing against Kim Kardashian and Kylie Kardashian and all the rest of them just to get eyes on an ad, which costs you money, and then it has very low conversion rate, blah, 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 blah. And that can't be the essence of wine. It has to be this story. It has to be, I was in Temecula walking down the street, I saw this La Fata thing with a beautiful store, and I went in there and I had this conversation and I've got a dream now. Has to be that. Every time your members get a box now from you or they come pick it up, it triggers a new thought. It's a new memory. It's why I was there. So tell me, where were you before you came to Temecula and what drew you to Temecula? There's a lot of wine regions in the state.
Yeah.
Why was it Temecula?
Well, I mean, I was living in Orange County, but then by the time I met my wife, Anna, we moved to the Santa Monica, Venice area, and we got married out here, which is when I came out here, and it was like, what was that, 2015? And I was like, oh, I love it out here, this is a beautiful region. But I wasn't yet like, is this where it's going to be? And you know that we actually have two AVAs. We have Santa Ynez and Temecula. It was on our honeymoon that we found Santa Ynez, and we were like, we're going to come up here. This is where we're going to live.
Well, yes,
and we were
it's
deep
beautiful
in.
too.
But then we were like, darn it, this is a little remote considering what she was still doing a lot with YouTube and Pop Sugar Fitness and all that back then. So we decided not to. And then when we decided to finally be like, where would we go live again? We decided to check back out here. And we were kind of like, you get how much land, how much house, what can we do out here? Holy cow,
That's
let's
funny.
go. And we came out here, and when we finally found our property, we didn't actually think winery in the beginning. We were running business retreats. So we thought, oh, rip out the 90 lemon trees and this and that, and let's get vineyard in. And I thought, oh, I'll just sell the grapes to somebody, and because that's what I was being told. Like everybody around was like, oh yeah, you plant, people will buy the grapes from you. And we were like, all right, but now we can turn our business retreat that we call Vision in the Vineyards, where we're like, oh, people can come out and they'll build the thing on the vineyard. It'll be an immersion retreat. How much better than that than going to a conference room or a hotel? Right, so that was our idea. It actually changed one of our other business models. But then when I started poking around the wine industry, and I'm like, so what is it like when you sell the grapes to people? And I was like, oh, that math sucks. I was just like, that's not interesting at all. And then I started to try to learn about the wine industry, but there was no real mentors out here. There were people that were willing to help, be like, hey, if you want to crush some grapes, you want to do this, you want to do that, etc. I found that there were helpful people, but nobody that'd be really like, I'm going to lay the tracks out for you. Right. Until I met Jason McLean. When I met Jason, he's the one that started to be like, if you want me to show you how to make this work, like a business, because he's like, the current way you're going after it, you're going to get killed. He's like, we have to, like, it's just not going to happen. And he's like, I'd rather tell you that. I always share the lesson that I'm like, being told that we were going to fail was the greatest thing that ever happened. Yeah. Because somebody's just, especially in this business, that you understand how much money goes into this business. He's like, he's like, just zero chance, and you're going to get killed. He's like, I'd rather tell you now so you get out before you like put yourself into like serious financial situations. But should you want the dream, let me show you what it looks like. And that's why I've always paid for the person that's just like, let me give you the process. Let me give you the roadmap, because discovering that on your own is a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
I've done 350 episodes and no one has ever told me that story.
Oh, well,
no one has ever said, I was warned.
Yeah. And I wish I could tell you, like, he's
right?
like, honestly, and he's just like,
That's
and then when
funny.
we're going through it, it's so hilarious, because he's like, he's very much, we're kind of like kindred brothers, the way we operate together. And he's kind of like, and throughout the next couple of years when we're just getting things going and everything's going to be, he's like, I'm going to have to kick you in the nuts again and tell you that it's going to get harder. It's going to get harder. He's just like, but should you survive those first 2, 3, 4 years, he's like, you'll have something that will be generational and will be something that can last a lifetime.
Wow. That's saying a mouthful. I think so, because I haven't been down here in a long time. And the last Temecula wine I featured in the Wine of the Month Club was Thornton, right? Thornton. Dave, he just retired. Anyway, he's the winemaker. He used to live up after my neighborhood. But we did wines from the Cellars winery, which was Vince Cellars, who was the lighting director for Merv Griffin. This is a very popular, I think, Callaway back in the day. There's never been a ton of information sharing and technology and industry know-it-all, so to speak, in this neighborhood. And I've never understood why, because Temecula is great, but it has turned into an amazing destination for the wine trade. So, but should you want to still chase this dream, here's how you're going to do it was great advice, because he's telling you what's going on.
I mean, we're actually in the process of, because when I came in and he's just like taking me through the steps, we were systemizing. I'm like, this is still off. This is still, we got to, what? And as we did all that, because I came from business coaching, we had the conversation, like, systemize this, because then we can look at creating Winery Academy and helping other young winemakers or wine brands, people that want to bolt it onto the business, how to do it following a better path. Because both of us he first didn't have the freaking thing. So he went and built everything. Then me coming through it, I kind of broke the system. And then he's just like, whoa, we have to fine tune it this way. And now we're always like, I don't ever like seeing somebody go through the same struggles that I did. All my business were always like, I figure something out, turn around to the people behind me and teach them the better, faster way for it. That's what we've always done. So now we're in the process of doing that for the wine industry, to be like, hey, if you're trying to figure out how do I bring on some wines or how do I do this and that, Winery Academy will be able to coach you through that.
That's a lot. There's a lot to talk about right there. Just that one little, the Wine Academy, which is pretty much what Steven Spurrier did in Paris when he started his business and ended up being the Judgment of Paris, and of course became the most famous wine guy in the world because of that. And it started as an academy, much the same term actually. But did you find that your business coaching, did you find that the industry was A or B or C receptive to this, completely resisting all of it, or sort of allowed you to use some of those techniques but had its own already in place?
So let me make sure I heard that right. So when I was looking for help, were people receptive to giving help?
You're applying the business consulting lessons you've learned in other industries to the wine trade, basically. Did the wine trade accept what you were thinking of doing? Did the wine trade resist it completely and none of it worked? Or did sort of a hybrid?
It's a bit of all that. I think the way we were thinking, first when we came in, we were just so naive. We did not really understand what was going on. And everyone has the model, like winery, like I opened the $10, $15 million facility. I have 30 acres of grapes, this, that, et cetera. And that was just not what we were envisioning.
Right.
And it was kind of Jason be like, you don't have to follow that model. There's plenty of amazing growers that we can source from, that we can work with, this and that. And he's like, and we can go with a different footprint, where he's like, we got lounges and you're just dropping yourself into different areas where the competition isn't 15 wineries on the same row, but he's just like, we go in Palm Desert, we go in San Diego, we go into here, there, et cetera. He's like, that way you're taking your wine to the places where there isn't the same. I was just like, this is a different footprint. This is a different model. And I just don't think most of the people that have done it the way they've done think outside the box that way.
Yeah.
And that's what we were finding, just people that were like, I can't see the vision the way you guys are doing it. I don't understand this. Tell a story in the bottle and make every bottle mean something. Like, they weren't thinking that. They're just like, I sell Merlot, I sell Cab, I sell a Super Tuscan, I make this and that, et cetera. That's
interesting.
It was just, I just don't think their minds were, and again, I'm talking the small sample. of that I've experienced. Of course, I'm generalizing, right?
Of course.
But
No, we have to.
I just found most weren't like, I get it. How many times I approached places to even be like, I'd love to do a taste of Temecula, include your things. And they were like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, bundling kind of stuff. And I'm the storyteller. And they were like, nah,
I don't get it.
I don't get it. And I was just like, forget it. Better to do my own thing.
That's fascinating because wine is about the story. I mean, it has to be. And the reason I brought it up is because there's a young kid. He came out of tons of backing. He came out of Cornell Business School. And this happens quite often in the 35 years that I've been associated with the industry, where they're trying to apply business school or MBA stuff to the industry, and they get their ass kicked. Until they come around and sort of conform, at least regulation-wise, and the distribution channels and all the things that go along with what we do and the regulations that we have to deal with, they realize that, no, these don't apply anymore. This is a different industry. It's got different reasons. And I think it's because of the product. Mm-hmm. Because the product has to tell its stories, and it has to make you feel something. You have to understand something about that bottle of wine. You can't just say, I've got the cheapest Merlot in the business.
Yeah.
You can't compete that way.
No, and I think the industry misses an opportunity. Community. Obviously, they sell membership, right? Membership is in, but there's a difference between I sell membership and allocations, and I build community, where there's events and there's connection. Mm-hmm. Back to the same words we were doing, where we're like, I think between, again, the small sample, like I've been a member of 13 wineries out here before. And the memberships were based upon, we had wine people problems.
That cost you money too,
Thank God I could write off R&D.
Oh, that's true.
But we were always just like, hey, what were the wineries that we liked the best? It's typically when we met some people that were either the great ambassadors or the great pourers that we loved, and we got to go there and connect with them and have time with them. Of course, the discounts were fun and all that, but you also were like, they put on dinners, they put this on. So it's the community built around it. But what I still found is a lot of the owners never descended in to really come and talk and play, or it was very distant. I'm at the dinner, I'll tell you a little bit about the wines, and we share a couple things, this, that. And it was still nice. You're still good to get to meet you. You wander the tables a few, but little bit do I truly understand you and know the stories. And you're connecting to the message of the wine. It was more like I have to do business duties at the dinner. And I was just like, In the other businesses that we've built, everything is around the community, because we're either the thought leader or the coach or the trainer ourselves. So we're in the trenches with people. So I just thought about, why won't we do that in the wine business?
Well, you have to have have a personality like you do, and I assume your wife's is gregarious and open as well. You have to be open. I mean, listen, when I stood at the tasting room in my office, I was there every Saturday when we were open, and you start telling stories, and that's what people wanted to hear, because it makes the wine taste better. How many people have you, for instance, talked to over the years that had tasted a wine, let's say in Sicily, and then they brought it home and it didn't taste the same, because the storytelling is not going on, and the atmosphere and the de-stressing part of it isn't occurring. In fact, this show started because of a very famous comedian in Los Angeles called me, and they wanted to start a wine club. And I'm like, why would I want to help you start a wine club? You're competing against me. Then I realized, no, because they want to start a wine club because they wanted to be with this celebrity. And if they had these community events, guess what didn't happen? The wine wasn't any good. So the community part of it sort of fizzled.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have good wine. And so you have that part of it. So tell me about that. So you bought the acreage, you planted these vines, you were told, look, once you start, you got to start. You can't play pussyfoot around with this thing. You got to do it all. And then you end up in Santa Ynez. So you have two appellations of wines here.
Correct. We have Temecula, and we have about two that are actually in now, more coming out with the 2022 vintage, because we got and sourced more up from Santa Ynez when we began. But Santa Ynez and Temecula, the two regions that are close to our heart, like where we were going to live and where we spent our honeymoon, and then where we planted roots and family. And I'll still keep my eyes out on things, because, it was a great moment to challenge thinking, right? Ann and I were thinking Temecula, Santa Ynez, et cetera. And then Jason turned to us and he's just like, are you going to be about just these two regions, or is La Fata Cellars about great wine, great stories, great? And I'm like, true. So he's like, who cares where we get the grapes from? It's what are we going to do with them? What are we going to create with it? What's the vision that we put in the bottle? What's the story, the moment, the memory, the mission, the meaning? And I was just like, that's so true because I love wines from all over the freaking world. So I'm like, why am I only thinking that way? This is where we got going. I don't know what the future holds yet, but this is the place that we have infrastructure and we have resources in. So that's where we are today and for the foreseeable future. But as entrepreneurs, as visionaries, our mind is always open to the doors that
It's
present
interesting
themselves.
thought because this whole concept of education of wine and, and people expect everybody to care and to want to understand the soil types. And you know already that probably 99% of the people who walk in here could really care less. As long as
That's never really moving it.
yeah. And so if you go back to this idea of an honest bottle of wine, it's even okay to have a California appellated wine if it has some character, if it means something, if it has some structure and some acid, some fruit and all the rest of it. And so I think consumerism I think you're right on track with the idea of this tasting room and telling the stories, because consumerism really is about that. It's not about, unless you're a wine geek, you probably don't care. And there's a woman up in Napa, her name is Sharon Kazan-Harris. She has a brand called Rare Cat. She has a tasting room in downtown Napa. She pours Bordeaux there. Can you imagine somebody having the gall to pour Bordeaux downtown Napa?
Yeah.
But it's because she's got the philosophy that you have, which is it's about the wine and the storytelling behind the wine and my ability to go find them and bring to the table something that represents what I'm about.
And the old dogs don't sometimes like that concept.
No.
And you're like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not your bone to chew on.
So when somebody comes in here, let's just say today, you open at 12 o'clock. Are we going to be talking about appellations? What are we going to be talking about with these people?
I mean, is it a moment to let them know where the wines come from?
Right.
Yes. But immediately it's about, this is a dream for Anna and Vito, that
Right.
they wanted to share the moments, the memories, the mission, the meaning with you all. That's the key thing that centers around everything. And then we begin taking them through various stories or things like that they are, when depending upon what way they choose. But literally there's an orchestration from why do we start with magical moments? Because right now can be a moment, or with the intention around the sparkling rosé, we're going to create something more magical because we're setting an intention. Today, I'm not just pouring you wine, but I'm going to share some stories that I hope you walk out with some meaning today.
It's
so
kind
that
of funny.
is how we kick things off.
It's kind of funny because I see you behind the bar in my vision and you're pouring off. And you could be saying, hey, this is San Ynez and, there's a schist soil and everything. And the tap roots are 30 feet down. And the guy's probably glossing over and their
100%.
eyes are rolling back in their head.
Yep.
Until you start saying the story. I used to squish grapes in the basement of my dad's, house in Long Island, right? And that's when people go, oh,
No,
I can relate to that.
They like enough to just be able to know it's 95% Chardonnay, 5% Pinot Noir. Why did we do that? Because we wanted a little bit more finish. We wanted that's about us. They're like, perfect.
Yeah, right.
You get into the whole it went through mallow. They're like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what those words are. And da-da-da. And that's when we were members at a lot of places and the winemaker would come out and be doing that, I always wanted to be like, because we knew a couple of them, and I would always be like, I'm like, tell me the story behind it. I don't even know what malolactic this is at and that, and don't tell me this. I'm like, come on, let your personality out. But it's not a train. You either got to train it or you have to have it as something that you've developed over the years. But that's why I was like, oh, Anna, we're so not going to do that, because that's also not our skill. Our skill is in the branding and the development of the stories, in how our personalities infuse into everything that we do, that we wouldn't be able to compete on that. I'm like, I can't enter that market.
Every Tuesday for 35 years, I sat and tasted wine. And I would hear these stories, and they would come in. And my dad always said, first of all, I don't really care if it's picked, there was a commercial years ago. This is picked by a one-armed guy in the hillsides of Chablis with, and he was supposed to be able to taste that, right? And he was like, I don't care. What is it? What does it make me feel when I open it? Just tell me I want to taste it. And if I feel something, then you can tell me the story. And I heard those stories over and over and over again. And I would finally tell the reps, look, I don't care really. Well, now I care because I'm telling the stories on the show. And that's what ended up happening. A Bordeaux winemaker comes in. He's telling me the story of his parents or the Nazis coming into the chateau, I go, you know what? We need to just sit in front of a microphone and tell that story over again. But this leads to the next thing, right? So consumerism is so important in our industry because really it has driven all of wine consumption in its history. I'm doing a podcast with the guy that wrote the book, Wine in the White House, next week, and he's going to tell stories about which presidents poured what wines and when and why and all those stories. But there's a group on the social side of things, social networking, LinkedIn, they're young kids, they're millennials. They're driving me nuts because they learn something new in this industry and they think that has never been told before. And part of their pitch right now is that wine industry isn't speaking the language of the people. And I suppose that's accurate if you're talking about malolactic fermentation, things like that. But that's not what you're doing here. You're telling the stories. You're not talking about those things. So I'm trying to figure out why this generation is attacking the industry and the language is off.
And this is 20-something-year-olds coming at you with this stuff? Just think about, have they lived enough life to have formed anything that they're seeing models, spreadsheets, and things like that as compared to being like, you haven't lived stories yet. You don't even have your own stories yet.
I sort of ranted right there because it drives me nuts.
I'd be like, hey, I think I can take something from you as soon as you're understanding to take what we've experienced in the last 50 years of things. And you're understanding what is truly going to matter at the end of the day won't be those models, won't be those metrics, won't be those KPIs.
Going back to what you were saying in the beginning, which is, boy, if we all understood each other a little bit more about where we're coming from. And I have to say, that's a really
I don't think they know the roots of the wine industry.
Right, that's right.
They see the spreadsheets of the wine industry.
Ooh, that's a good comparison, right? I have to tell you, at the African American Association of Vintners dinner tasting, obviously there's serious issues that need to be brought to the table in that regard. When I reached out to them in 2002 or 3, one of the early social uprisings that we had in LA, I wanted to feature a wine from their group. There were only 4 members at that time, and then none of them made enough wine for my club at the time. Now there's 200 members and around 75 vintners that make wines, and wines are excellent. They face, despite their intimidation factor of the wine for the Black community, they also face the regular battles that you're facing today, which is, we're trying to make $1, and this industry is tough. Are you in the wholesale world now? I mean, that's one of the big. Do you want to be in the wholesale world?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially. I've learned to never really say never.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
That's a good business lesson for you. Business coaching.
It's just right now we don't have enough volume to enter that market.
Yeah.
So when we increase production and the business matures more, I'll take a look at that if we want to enter that. But I also think about other models that we can run, because I'd rather keep the boutique style, everything in, drop more lounges around and kind of expand the market that way. And or kind of what we're figuring out with things like turning into the coaching side and being like, I don't have to build everything myself. I could help others build their dream. And it's part of my dream as well. So that's where our brain is currently. Maximize and optimize the current model, see what other ways we can do it without it having to be all just us. I've always been about helping other people also live their dream.
That's an interesting thought, and I don't know that I've ever seen it done that way, that you help people understand what it's going to be. Just like Jason was telling you, like either you're nuts or you're all in, one of the two, right? Those, or maybe it's both at the same time.
Probably.
So that you help people understand and sort of walk them through the process and hold their hand as a business coach, which is what you do. Well, that's an interesting thought applied to, I don't think that I've ever heard that story before, where you apply your business coaching skills into the fray of wine.
Yeah, I mean,
which is such a romantic thing to do.
Some of the best business ideas or more successful is you took something from another industry and you just drop it into an industry that's never seen that before.
Right.
That I'm like, this goes on all the time. Like in our other business, the Legacy Creator, we just teach people how to take their coaching and their expertise and package it into an online business. So we're used to being like, take our model, take another person's dream, put it into it. It was in the wine business that we were like, no one's doing that here.
Yeah, that's true. That's totally true.
Ideas are transferable.
Yeah. No.
I was like, let's just take this over here and go.
And it could be what the industry needs to sort of break the mold a little bit to help people understand what it's about. There's a large direct-to-consumer company for sale right now, huge. And I got a phone call from one of the potential investors. And the first thing he said to me was, I know nothing about wine and I know nothing about internet marketing. And that's what this company is. I mean, it's about wine and it's good wine, not the crap that they're bringing, 50 cents a liter from Europe. And it's internet marketing. I said, then why you want to do this? He goes, it just looks like so much fun. The industry looks like so much fun. I'm like, yeah, that's probably the prevailing attitude of most consumers that walk into a place like this, hear the stories, and you can now tell the story of at least putting your toe in the water through the academy.
Yep.
That's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Yeah, that's great. So any appellations you're looking at, like you think maybe you're going to buy some Napa juice, or are you buying grapes, by the way? Or are you buying juice?
Yeah. A bit of both. A bit of both. Until production came up. Like when I first got started, I needed to augment with some juice. Yes. But then I started to plan all the grape purchase to like catch up so that I can do it via that way. But yes, I mean, I've got my eyes out for things because I truly freaking love from different regions. I got a buddy that's got stuff in Sicily. I'm like, I don't know how I can make that happen, but I'm going to think about that, and whether it's just juice or something like that. I'm like, I would love to bring some Sicilian wine
stuff, man.
Into
Caparato
there.
And Zolia.
I know. We took the kids there a year and a half ago, and we lived there for like a month, just so that. And our game plan is every couple of years take them for a month or two as we can get things going. Depends on then this came and we're landlocked for a little bit, but we just love Sicily and we love to bring some Sicilian wines in. But I love Napa, I love Paso, I love so many freaking regions. Depends on how relationships go.
Like this woman pouring Bordeaux and Napa, I think Sicilian wines here, and I can help you with that. Finding good juice would be such a natural. And the things that inspire me about Sicilian wines is one, this volcanic soil. It makes amazing complexity. And this Mediterranean offshore salty air that sort of dresses the vines. And and that would be something you pour here and people would freak out.
Yeah, a buddy of mine who's a Sicilian that lives here, and he owns a winery and he owns a bunch of restaurants out here. He's the only one that I know that's doing it and doing it well. And I actually bought some Sangiovese and some stuff for him. But now that he's going to actually build his big winery, he's like, I don't got any extra grape. I was like, damn it, I got to find some new connections. Gotta find some new connections for that.
Well, look,
I want to hear your.
It's not necessary.
When this is over, I want to hear your juice.
Yeah, it's not necessary to buy grapes. You know that, as long as you have a solid source and it's under your control as to what profile you want.
That's right.
I mean, that's most wine is bought and sold that way anyway. I mean, like
that's right. That's what I didn't like. Imagine that. We don't understand that when you're first getting in the wine business. You think I got to plant it all, I got to grow it all, and he's like, almost nobody does that. You understand that? I was like, no,
that's not the way it works.
I did. And he's like, that's not the way it works, dude. I was like, damn, good lesson to learn quick before we get going.
I have a cousin who planted grapes in his yard in the valley, and now he's like 100 vines, and he made wine from it. And he goes, I gave it all away, and friends want more of my wine. Can you buy me some juice? I said, yeah. I go, but now it's not your wine. So if you're trying to give away the stuff that's from your yard, then buying juice from somebody else, I can find it for you, but that's not the way. That's not the same story. So then he went off and bought grapes from San Ynez, actually. He bought some Sauvignon Blanc, and he had them crushed. I go, no, you don't understand. Since it's not your vineyard, it costs them like $20 a bottle to make it. I go, I could have gotten you a great juice for $5 a bottle. I'm talking about good wines. And he's like, really? I go, yeah, you don't need to buy the grapes every time and crush them yourself, as long as you're in control of the character.
That's right.
And if you want an honest wine, then we find honest wines that haven't been played with. If you want just, whatever. Anyway, it's already been.
That's part of the exact thing that we're trying to do with the infrastructure that we're building right now, to being like, so depending upon what you want to do, we might have in juice, we might have in grape, we might have whatever. Then it's just us being like, how do you build the story into that? How do you do that? That's what a lot of people just don't understand. And they don't have the infrastructure for that to then be like, so from juice to bottling to distribution that's the nightmare of the industry, that we're like, you're going to plug into the infrastructure we've built so that we can scale and get you in at better price points. That's brilliant. I think that's what no one's doing that has thought about crush facilities.
No.
They're like, I'm going to crush your wine.
That's it.
And that's it.
Right.
And you're like, but that's where the biggest issue I ran into was, you go that far. And I was like, I'll pay any of you to tell me what goes on next because I'm trying to get it to bottle, to a thing, to the people's hands without getting in trouble with the government or this or that or whatever, or making some dollar out of this. And that's where luckily I found Jason because he's just like
a dollar would be good actually if you could do that. If you could pull off $1, then you're ahead of most people.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. But I also think that comes down to the model everyone sees is these $10, $15 million big ass wineries and whatnot. That I'm like, yeah, that's tough. I mean, this still was expensive as hell, but it wasn't $15 million to get into it type stuff. That it's a different opportunity.
That's like a casino. It's built on the slot machines and, the wineries that you see in Napa, the current ones like Dave Del Dotto, they weren't built on the wine sales. They were built on their other empires. And then the wine part was thing. I think most of those guys start that and they go, gee, I didn't realize this was so hard and I got to make a buck and I have to charge $200 a bottle because my grapes are $10,000 a ton in order to make $1. Wow. And there aren't that many buyers. Gee, I just figured that out. Anyway, we're already past our allocated time.
It was a good time.
Such a pleasure to have you on the show and be
Thank
down
you.
here back in Temecula. My wife's like, this is a fun day trip. I'm so happy that we did this. So I appreciate coming back down. We have a lot to talk about in the future, though.
Absolutely.
We're going to do this again, and I'd love to have Anna on the show as well and hear more about some of the tangent businesses you guys are working on, because I worked with my wife for 35 years. So
we could do a show just on that, bro.
You could do a show on that.
How did we both do that without them killing us in our sleep?
Exactly.
It was a pleasure to be on. I appreciate you, Paul.
My pleasure. Cheers.